Matt, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, Bo. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So, Matt, tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what you're doing.
Yeah, so Uncle Matt's Organic. We were founded in June of 1999. I'm a true uncle. I have 10 nieces and nephews. We're America's number one selling and oldest organic orange juice brand in the U.S. You can find us nationwide, Hawaii to Alaska to Maine to even down in Puerto Rico, and over probably almost 20,000 stores now.
And you started organic back in 1999 as organic.
Yeah, so before there was actually the USDA organic seal that didn't come back into effect until 2002. So we started in '99, and we were certified by Florida Organic Growers, and they certified it to the California Foods Production Act of 1990. So which was later turned into the USDA organic rule.
That's wild. You were organic before organic was really a thing. What made you want to start Uncle Matt's as an organic brand?
So I had out of college, I grew up in agriculture, fourth generation Florida citrus grower. I went to college to get out of the citrus business, and I was a business major. But when I got out, I had an opportunity to still work in the citrus industry. My father had a grower, and he was consulting on that guy's grove, and he was German. And the German said, "Hey, I really need somebody to help me sell juice, Florida orange juice and grapefruit juice to my friends in Germany who have bottling plants." And so I started a import-export business, started selling conventional in 94, 95, 96, had a really good business selling conventional orange juice and grapefruit juice. We would ship it to Holland, and then it would truck down into Germany. And one of those German customers asked about organic. He said, "Hey, this is really trending over in Germany, and can you find me some organic grapefruit juice?" And at that time, it's probably 96, 97. I had no idea what organic was. I came back, had your typical entrepreneur aha moment, like, "Hey, this isn't available in the U.S. There's no Tropicana or Simply that's organic. There may be an opportunity here." And so then I went further to my grandfather and father and asked them about organic farming. And my granddad told me, wonderful times about how he was alive before pesticides were invented after World War II. And he said, "Hey, we farmed without pesticides before that. And I think it's a better way to farm. We should go back to a lot of those methods. It's more holistic around soil health and then natural tree health instead of just single factor. If you have a pest, you go get a pesticide." So that gave me the confidence that if my grandfather thought it was a better way to farm, and I believe there was, no competition in the market at that time, that, hey, maybe I should launch some kind of organic orange juice brand. I had no branding experience. I had no CPG. I didn't know anything about distribution. I knew how to buy raw fruit, turn it into juice, and send it to Europe. So I had to really learn a lot to come up with the final product of Uncle Matt's Organic pulp-free orange juice, which was our first item, and we launched that in June '99.
Yeah, I was actually scoping out some of your stuff on your website. I mean, it's truly like there's only one ingredient.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
the
well,
fruit
that's
that you have
our
in there.
hero SKU. Yes, our cornerstone hero SKU is just our no, and still number one selling is just pulp-free orange juice. Pretty simple,
Yeah.
but we've added a good amount of functional ingredients to other things since then for inflammation or gut health, immune support, things like that. So it's been pretty fun. We've diversified into quite a bit of stuff. We really like to refer to ourselves as a better for you beverage company, and our goal is to be the number one selling organic better for you beverage.
So you started this venture in 99 and it was basically you, right? A typical entrepreneur
Yeah.
yourself and
Yep.
kind of bootstrapping it and figuring it out. And now
Yep.
you're in 20,000 stores with how many employees?
We're about 70 employees.
That's great.
Yeah. And we self-manufacture. So we have our own bottling facility. Just started that about a year and a half ago, which is a big one for us. We used co-manufacturers forever and
Mhm.
had good partners with them, but it just became clear after COVID, with the growth of the company, and we outgrew our one co-packer. We wound up going from one to three co-packers, and we were spread out all over the country. And so we just finally narrowed it down and consolidated everything into Texas. And now we ship east and west and split the country in half. It does a real good job to help with our quality and our logistics.
So, when you were talking with your grandfather and your father, did they happen to mention, when they were farming before, like, pesticides were really a thing? Was the yield better pre-pesticides or the same, or less? What's the
Yeah.
rule of thumb, with that?
So the production was as good or better. The difference was there were quite a bit of difference. The plantings were a lot less dense, so they planted 70 trees per acre. I think it was 30 by 30. 30-foot wide meadow, 30 foot between a tree, and today it's 150 trees per acre.
Oh, double.
Double or even 200 trees per acre. So a
Wow.
much more tighter set. They want to get production quicker, right? So within 3 to 4 years, that tree's mature enough where the old style. But the crazy thing is, you would get the same production. You just had to wait longer on the old plantings that were less dense. But my grandfather said, he goes, listen, there were a lot of organic practices that we did back in the day with cover crops and compost and the way we worked the grove. That those methods were not just they weren't disproven as being bad methods. They were just displaced by new technology, the synthetic
Mhm.
fertilizers, the synthetic pesticides. Those things were the shiny new ball at the local universities, and so that's what the funding and research was poured into, and so that's what was then conveyed out to growers, and so the industry just continued to move into that direction.
Interesting.
Hmm.
That's wild that you're like you're you're planting 2, if not almost 3 times, but getting the same yield as the years of when your grandfather was doing it,
Yeah,
which is
and if you would
probably hurting the soil too, right? When you're planting that much crop in one area?
Well, it's a lot different, right? I wouldn't say it hurts the soil. It's more of a monoculture from a
Mhm.
standpoint because you have that much more natural things that are not growing in that orchard. They would work the grove both ways, north, south, east, west. You would be able to get all around the grove, and then the tree would get 360-degree sunlight, right? So
Yeah,
all sides would get it. Where now, if you're really tight set, you have just like a hedgerow, and depending on how it's set, there's two sides that really aren't getting much sun because they're grown together. So
yeah.
just two different philosophies, and I don't think people are going back to the old, wider spacing because they want production sooner and quicker, and so more density does that.
Mhm. So you guys are doing the manufacturing yourselves now. What about the actual, the crop itself? Um, are you guys growing your own fruit, or are you, buying that from farmers, or how's that work?
Yeah, so we have taken quite the journey over those 25 years in that practice. So we started out with 3 acres in my dad's backyard. We converted that to organic. And from there, we had probably, we grew to almost 35, 40 growers that we converted to organic in the state of Florida. So basically, Lake County, Polk County, Highlands County, right down the center of the state. It's called the Ridge because it's slightly higher. It's sandy than the coastlines. And it's a great place to grow citrus. We amassed about 1,500 acres, all organic. We had a separate company that took care of it. My dad and brother, the agronomists, they headed it up, and they wrote the farm plans and helped get the product certified, get it harvested, everything. So then this little bug shows up, an Asian citrus psyllid, a little insect, and inside it is infected with citrus greening disease, a bacterial disease. It doesn't affect humans, it just affects the tree. And when the little insect bites the leaf, it goes down into the main artery of the citrus tree. It's the phloem and the xylem, and those wind up getting calloused. They get clogged up by this virus and the tree trying to stop the virus from spreading or the bacteria. And so the tree eventually dies because it doesn't get enough water flow and nutrient flow through its main artery. No different if you're clogged up, you eventually have a heart attack. In a human, the tree eventually has a heart attack.
Yeah,
And the greening, the word why it's called greening is because when that tree gets conflicted and constricted from water and nutrients, the fruit does not ripen properly. It stays green and it falls off. It doesn't taste as good. The tree doesn't produce, and eventually it dies. And so
right.
That afflicted our um, acres. It hit the entire state, both conventional and organic. In our peak, I think our industry was 850,000 acres. Today, it's probably 250,000 of varying acreage. And the 1,500 that we have about 70 acres left of that is solely for research, for finding a cure to greening. And so that's what my dad and brother do just about every day, is different field trials to try and find a cure. So therefore, we had to pivot. So up until 2015, after starting in 1999, amassing this great group of growers, this great farm plan, taking care of all of it. Everything that we grew went into our bottle. I didn't have to buy one single little ounce outside of that area. We had to rapidly change because our groves within 3 to 4 years were, down to half production, then a third production, then core production. And then you're out. You were completely out of business. So we had to pivot to Texas. We had to pivot to California. We had to pivot to East Coast of Mexico. Those are our primary sources today. And we've since grown even from there to look into the Southern Hemisphere, Peru, Brazil, other locations to try and help find organic, good taste and high quality citrus to supply us. But we've done a very good job of pivoting as a business, but it's not what we had dreamed of and really hoped for. I'd like
Mhm.
nothing more just to walk out my back door and, hey, come tour my 1,000 acres. Let me show you how beautiful it is. And the next 1,000 that we're converting.
Yeah. How do you when you spread out like that with other growers across the world, really, I mean,
Yep.
how do you make sure that they're, growing things organically and not
Yep.
using the pesticides and the
Yep.
glyphosate and all that stuff?
So they're no different than the U.S. Crops, the U.S. growers. We all have to be certified by the USDA organic seal. And so they have the same issues, the same products that they have to use, and they get inspected annually. They have a certifier that will be USDA compliant. So they're the same thing, independent audit, unannounced audits, random samples, all of those things their certifier does to be accredited by the USDA. We go down and visit them regularly as well. What we're trying to do is actually help them. We're trying to help increase their quality production, make sure that they can identify greening if it is starting to come into their location, and learn from us the things that we did to help slow it down and prevent it. It won't cure it, but at least you could identify it sooner and try and do some practices that may prevent it.
I've heard and read that, and correct me if I'm wrong, even if you are certified USDA organic, that you are still allowed a certain percentage of pesticides. Is that accurate?
No, no, that's not accurate. There's an approved list, and you're either allowed to use that product or not. So you can't go in and let me say I would say, I can't really get rid of weeds. I'm going to go use Roundup for
Mhm.
5% of my acreage. Yeah, that you would be kicked out immediately.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so that's not the case on inputs. I think what you're probably referring to is the 5% that you would be allowed, but they have to be on the approved list for end products. So like natural flavors, right?
Mm,
So if you can't find an organic natural flavor, then you could use a conventional natural flavor if it was approved and on the list. But
mhm.
and that goes through the National Organic Standards Board. They look at those products. If you think you have a product that could be on that list, you would propose it to them, and they have to go through an approval process. But if there's an organic product that is, part of that list, you have to use the organic product.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And that applies to even, suppliers that are in Mexico, Peru, all of
Oh,
that stuff.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It's the same. I mean, USDA Organic Seal sets the rules. It's the National Organic Program. Congress oversees it, and so you have to play by those rules no matter where you are around the world. And if
Mhm.
you don't, then you don't get accredited, and you're not allowed to be as or national or USDA organic.
That's good to know. I mean, because I know that there's a lot of people out there that say, even though it says organic, it's really not that organic because they allow this or that. So that's good to know.
Yeah, and I would say this, is it a perfect system? No. And so there's been some splinters off from the organic to try and, make it even a better system. And more power to them if they think they can come up with the perfect system, go for it. That's the beauty of the free market in the US. But I will tell you, it's vastly better than just conventional agriculture, conventional food products,
Mhm.
um, the current organic system. And it's also the only seal that if you violate it, you can go to jail. I mean, there is the
Oh, really?
penalty of fraud. Yeah, you have defrauded the consumer if you are now saying, hey, this is organic and you're putting conventional or you're putting stuff in that isn't allowed on that list, and you're committing fraud. So people can go to jail. Um, it's much tougher than if you had the non-GMO seal or you had, better housekeeping seal or whatever, pick a seal that's
Yeah.
out there, gluten-free seal, all those things, and you defraud them. You're not going to jail from that certified entity or from Congress.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Um, Another thing I was gonna ask is you started in '99 with 1 SKU, right? The pulp-free orange juice? And how many years later did you start adding other SKUs of different, products?
Yeah, I think it was 2 years later, we then added with pulp. And then after that, we added an apple. And the apple didn't go so well. So then we dropped back and we added a calcium. So we, basically orange, pulp free with pulp, and then orange with calcium. That was kind of the core business. From there, we eventually added lemonades, punches, and now we're even brewing organic black tea.
I saw that, that's awesome. So how many total SKUs do you guys have now?
Probably 20, a little over, probably 24, 25, including our juice boxes and our little shots.
Mhm, and
We're
are
always seem to innovate.
yeah, that's great, that's you have to in
Mhm.
business, right?
Yep.
In
Correct.
order to
Yep.
stay
Innovate.
competitive. Do you and so all of your products are now being manufactured in-house?
Yeah. I would say 95% of them are in house.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
And you're based in Florida?
Correct. Yep. Based in Florida, but we used to have all of our citrus, all of our production, everything in Florida. And now we're obviously diversified some
Sure.
outside of Florida.
Let me ask you this, one thing I've always wondered is, you know, it's it's one thing to start a product like you did, like orange
Hmm.
juice, be able to sell it locally, and, you could go out and talk to the local grocery stores and get the managers to see if they could add them to their shelf, right? Add you to their
Right.
shelf. How did you get from selling locally to then all of a sudden nationally in
Mm.
20,000 stores? Because I looked on your
Yeah.
website and
Hmm.
your map, and it's actually sold up here by me.
Oh, yeah. You're in Chicago. That's a great, great city for us.
Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, you can find a bunch of stores up there. So, I mean, we start like most business owners, you start local if you can, right? It's right in your backyard. And we got our start with health food stores, a local chain called Chamberlain's, and also then a conventional retailer called Goodings, which, between those two gave me enough volume. Plus, I added a produce distributor, and the produce distributor specialized in organic and natural foods. And so it went up and down the East Coast and hit a lot of the mom and pop. So, kind of between those three, I had enough to make my run every 2 weeks.
mm,
Every 2, 3 weeks, I made 600 cases of Uncle Matt's. I needed to sell it in 14 to 21 days before the date code was too short. And the retailer didn't want to, purchase it because they didn't think it would move fast. And so
mhm,
that was a really, really tough game in the beginning because I had to eat the product. We sent it to the food bank if we didn't get it sold in that 2 to 3 week window from production, and that was a lot of money for a startup. So it was very motivational to get out there and sell that whole 600 cases every single run.
yeah,
But that's how I did it. And I started with a couple very good accounts locally that I knew could sell our product. I went in with a little sales deck and a pitch and told them why I thought my product was unique and better. And then, of course, tried samples. And I really actually didn't have it in production yet. I just
mm,
had some mock up cartons, and they said they both agreed to it. And once I added some more distribution with a produce distributor, I knew like, okay, I'm pretty sure I can get through it. And so that was the beginning. Then from there, I headed a food broker. So I had another group that came in, and they had people out in the streets. They would go up and down to the stores. And so we added a broker that then went to all the distributors' customers that weren't carrying me. And they said, hey, you can get it through Albert's Organics. You can get it through this guy. Why don't you bring the product in? And so they were an extension of me. I couldn't get to, 400 or 500 natural food stores up and down the East Coast, but my food broker could. And so I paid them a percentage of all the sales. And then, it's not a large percentage, so it really helps. Like there's no way I could hire 4 or 5 salespeople when you're small. So you get a broker.
Yeah.
And from there, then, you convince the next broker in the next territory up in the Midwest in Chicago area. I had a same small broker up there. I convinced him, hey, look how it sells down in the Southeast. Hey, right, I think I've got enough between conventional retailers and other guys. I'll go sign up enough people, and then we'll turn on the distributor that can service them up here in the Midwest. And so I started doing that across the country, finding the right food broker in those areas and convincing them and selling and pitching to their sales team. And then they would go out and sell it. And we would get distribution in that region. And so then I'd start shipping, pallets and more pallets and more pallets to their different warehouses around the country. And from there, I went from 600 cases to, hundreds, thousands and thousands of cases. And that's how you grow it.
That's awesome.
And at the
I love
same
that.
time, you're picking off the big fish, right? So besides the small mom and pop stores, the health food stores and the co-ops, you're trying to get your Kroger, your Publix, the bigger conventional retailers that, they have, 1,000 stores, 2,000 stores, and, big, suddenly your business is put on the map. And that happened with Publix with us early on in 2001. Publix came on board and brought in our, pulp-free orange juice. And
Oh,
that
wow. So
put
3
us
years later, you were in Publix.
3 years later. And I literally called on that account for 3 years, like, take me in. The buyer was such a gentleman. He was tough. He was hard. Raul Garcia, but he was such a kind man. He knew I was a young entrepreneur. And he just said, hey, listen, you don't need to call me every day. You don't need to, you don't need to send me samples every week. When it's time to review the category, you'll get your chance and come in and you'll pitch it at that time. And said, oh, okay, Raul. And so I went in there and pitched it with my dad and my granddad. So there were 3 generations. And then in our family, we're 7th generation Floridians. So we had grown up on Publix, all of us, because there's a Publix on every corner. And so I sat in front of that buyer with 3 generations. It was really cool. And my granddad, he had grown up, as a citrus grower, fresh fruit grower. And his biggest thing was, gosh darn it, Publix, you went from giving us, 20 feet of citrus, and now you're putting in mangoes. Now you're putting in more blueberries. You're cutting away the Florida citrus guy. And this is how we're trying to make a living here. So he wanted to go in and talk about that. And so I had to have a conversation with the parking lot. I said, all right, Pappy, I'm totally in agreement with you. I think that it's crazy that they have taken away from the Florida citrus grower, 4 feet and given it to blueberries and mangoes and peaches or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
But this is not the meeting for that. Let's first try and get the orange juice in, get a little favor, and then we'll circle back and, try and tell them what to do with their fresh fruit set. And he just kind of threw his hands up. He said, okay, well, I won't even talk. You just, if you want me to talk, you just point to me and I'll talk, but I won't say no. and he did. He sat down there and just kind of smiled, didn't say much, but I brought him into conversations periodically, to get his take on the history of Florida and citrus and all that. And he was wonderful in that meeting. And my only regret from that day is we didn't take a photo because I would love to have it back here on the wall of that, beautiful day of 3 generations of citrus growers, culminating with the best accounts that we could possibly get that really put my company on the map and to the next level.
So did you ink the deal at that meeting with Raul?
Yes. So Raul then, he put us in after that meeting, which was awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So at the time, I mean, how many stores did Publix have when they gave you the account?
I want to say they had like 900 right around there, like 800 to 900 stores. And so it was, it was fantastic. And the story behind that, Raul called me on 9/11. So literally I'm sitting in my office. The one employee I had, uh, she was from New York and she was crying because the first Twin Tower had just fallen. I was like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, what a horrible day. This is terrible. You need to go home, go,
Mhm.
be with your family, call friends up there, whatever you need to do. And then about 30 minutes later, I'm sitting there watching the second tower and like, holy crap, this is not good. And Raul calls and he says, hey man, Raul Garcia. I said, geez, hey Raul, how you doing? He said, well, on a really bad day, I want to give you some really good news. We're going to bring you in. I was kind of
Wow.
like, what? Wow. 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 The emotions still today kind of gives you goosebumps of like, ooh, just the emotion of that moment for America, the emotion of that moment for me in
Yeah.
business. I knew like this was it for my company. I've now, if I don't screw this up, I've got the best customer that can help all my volume, can help, purchasing power, brand building, all of that. And it culminated after 3 years of hounding this guy within 3 generations sitting in front of him. And then, what was happening to America that, dreadful day. So,
That's amazing. So
mhm.
you went from you were doing roughly like what, 600 cases a week you were selling? Is that what it was?
Yeah, 600 cases every 2 weeks,
2 weeks, okay.
maybe 3 weeks I'd stretch it to, like, okay, gotta get it going.
So roughly 1,000 cases a month, and then you get Publix, and then what does that take you to from 1,000 cases to what?
Yeah. So you immediately, I mean, they're 900 stores, they would take 900 cases and they would sell that within about a week and a half.
Mm,
Eventually they would sell it in a week. So your volume just, basically doubles,
yep.
like just like that with a phone call.
That's
Uh,
ins that's insane.
Yeah, yeah, but then, of course, you're following up next year with, "Hey, add one more item." Follow up, "Hey, give me another item." Just you continue to wanna kinda have as sharp elbows as you can to push those other brands out of the way and gives you more opportunity, and eventually, he put a couple of items in, and today, I think we have 7. A couple we have 5 big bottles and 2 small bottles, so we do really well. Publix, wonderful people, wonderful cow. They're tough. You gotta produce. You gotta, don't short them. They're operationally driven company. If you
Yep.
go in there, their shelves are usually pretty well stocked. That's because their suppliers are doing a good job.
Are you still working with Raul, or is he now since
Now
retired?
he has since retired. Yeah.
Yeah, so how
Mhm.
many years did you end up working with him?
I worked with him for about, I think, like 5 years. They rotated buyers. He wound up going over to like buying squash and some other things in that produce set.
Mm,
But I would periodically see him when I would go down there and I would call on the juice buyer. They're all over in that kind of same area. And so I'd walk by his office and I'd shake his hand and just, always tell him so much, thank you, thank you, thank you
yeah.
for, believing in me and not arresting me for harassment.
That's a great story, man, I love that. That's like every entrepreneur's dream, right? Just get that one break, that
Yeah.
takes you to the moon.
Yeah. You remember that day. I remember that one. I remember the time I got into Kroger. I remember the time I got into Whole Foods, and you get those breaks where it's a national, like, "Hey, this your chance, kid." And it's like, "Yo, wow, yep, we've worked on this one. We're working on this one," and you get 'em. So
Do you guys sell on Amazon too? Do you do e-commerce?
we do e-com. It's a small, very small percentage of our business because it's heavy. It's heavy and it's perishable, right? It's heavy liquid. It's perishable. If I was a little powder in a pouch, I'd do fantastic. But we're a heavy liquid, so you can buy us. We'll ship it to any of our products to you in the continental U.S.
Yeah.
But it's there really more as a convenience for people who can't find us or can't find the item they want in their local store.
Right.
Uh, it's going to cost you more.
What is the shelf life of your juices typically?
Mhm.
Since you're not putting any preservatives or any of that kind
Yep.
of stuff, right?
So we flash pasteurize it, and it'll last 70 days in a bottle if kept cold. And then once
Okay,
you open it, you need to drink it within 7 days.
gotcha.
Hmm. And that's
So
pretty industry norm.
from from the time that it's bottled, you get 70 days basically, right?
Correct. Yep.
And how long does it take to go from the tree to the bottle?
Well, in some instances, it can be 2 or 3 days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. hmm Yeah, pretty quick. I mean, when it's in season, we're blowing and going. I mean, it's
Yeah.
you want to process and put it in a bottle as soon as you can.
What is season for you guys?
So it will range. It's basically January through April
Mm,
is North American citrus season for the Valencias, which is what we primarily use.
mhm.
hmm Yep.
What, what do you guys do with all of, like, the waste? Because you're pressing the oranges to get the juice, right? So then what do you do with all of that, peel the
Yeah. So
guts, all that stuff?
most of our processing partners, they have one or two options. You either have a feed mill, so they'll dry it and turn it into feed for cattle. Some of them compost it.
Mm,
That's kind of one of the main two things. They'll either compost or they'll turn it into to cattle feed, or they just have it as waste.
mhm,
But most of them it's either raw cattle feed, so it'll just go right out to a cow pasture as raw, or they'll dry it and turn it into a pellet. Or the other thing is they'll turn it into compost. We really like the ones that compost it and put it back out on their grooms because it makes a wonderful compost.
yeah, I was just gonna say that's great that you're constantly recycling, because
Yep.
I know that's a big thing nowadays. It's starting to become a big thing is regenerative farming, right?
Oh,
Rather than
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
Regenerative, and it's based in organic. A lot of
yeah.
those regenerative practices are organic. Cover crops, compost. Those are big things.
Um, so your 70 acres are strictly used for research and development now, and
Mm.
that's crazy. You went from, 1,500 acres of grow
Yep.
onto 70 all because of a virus, right?
A little bacteria and a bug that then kind of like the mosquito with malaria.
Yeah. And so have your father and brother been able to figure out, how to combat that disease?
So they have slowed it down, but nobody has been able to truly cure the tree and keep it greening free.
Mm,
So the issue is you can clear out the phloem, you can take some of the calluses away, and so that thing can flow again. The problem is you can just get reinfected and
mm,
reinfected. It only takes one little bug, right? So
mm,
you have to. It's going to be more of a holistic approach. It's going to be something where the tree's natural immune system turns on. So even if it does get infected, it's able to identify that bacteria, and it either has its own immune system that kills that bacteria, or it has enough probiotics, other things in that phloem that will outcompete that bacteria for food and water and nutrients. And so they're combating it from a variety of things, but there's no silver bullet, unfortunately. And
out
the
outside of
greening is
uh,
winning. The greening is winning still.
outside of using, actual pesticides, that's the only way you could prevent it, right?
Well, even pesticides don't prevent it. No.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, because it only take. I mean, you literally need to spray like every day with some neonicotinoid pesticide to just napalm the tree. And what
Mhm,
happens, even if some growers are spraying, they would be as aggressive as every week, which is crazy. But even that, you'll still get infection. And then what is that doing to the grove, the orchard? It basically kills all of your friendly bacteria, all of your friendly pests and predators. So it's not the answer. And those groves are still dying off as well. So,
kinda similar to us. I mean, the mainstream idea nowadays is that, antibiotics have been overprescribed, and now a lot of humans
yep,
can't fight off normal bacteria.
correct. Yeah. So there's a lot to digest. You'd have a fun time sitting down with my dad and brother, the agronomists, of how we got here as an
Yeah.
industry. And you'd be surprised, or maybe not surprised, but it really does kind of follow the same path as human health and sort of the pharmaceutical companies and the hospitals and stuff, and just, you know, following the wrong paths, not being proactive, not thinking of holistic cures. but thinking more of just single factor kind of stuff, right? You're treating the symptom and not really going after the disease.
Does this, disease affect all plants or just citrus plants or
Yeah, for now, it just affects citrus. Yeah, it only affects citrus.
wow,
Mhm.
fascinating.
Yep. And what we have found as I travel around the globe looking for other good supply sources, the areas that are arid and dry and really hot, so you get temperatures 105, 110 over the summers, and the climate's, not subtropical like Florida, but gets 20 inches or less, like in rainfall.
Mhm.
It's not conducive at all for the bacteria to thrive. So
Mm,
while the tree may get infected, the temperature gets too hot in the summer and it'll naturally kill the bacteria in the tree, we believe. The nights get a little too cold, so that vector doesn't like to, live when it's too cold at
right.
night. So those areas, like more Mediterranean climates, your California, in places like that, they have those type of temperatures and climates. And so while they find little bits of the bacteria showing up, they don't have any kind of, large breakouts and declining production like in Florida. So our subtropical 50 plus inches of rainfall, we never get over, we really don't get 100-degree days here because it gets too humid and it rains.
Mhm.
That's the climate this bug really thrives in: tropics, subtropics. So that's where
And
we're
and
stuck.
and citrus still grows well in those type of, environments?
It does. It grows differently. So it'll grow a thicker peel.
Huh.
It'll be more for fresh fruit markets because you can peel it real easy. That's why California is primarily a fresh fruit industry. And
Mm,
those other Mediterranean industries are also geared for fresh fruit. Florida, because of its subtropical climate, has a very thin peel. So it's more dense with juice. So it's much better for juicing. But it's really hard to peel a Florida orange because of that climate. So you would get a little different flavor profile, and you'd get more juice per box. And so Florida was perfect for being a juice industry. And so oranges grown here were primarily for juice, where California is exactly the opposite.
so what does your day-to-day look like now that you're not stalking buyers? What's the
Yeah.
role of CEO for you now?
So I still love a good buyer stalk. Uh, I'm always game for that chase, that thrill of the hunt. So I will attend, nice big account meetings, great super regionals. I'll try and go along with our sales team or hop on some Zoom calls with them during their presentations because I love getting into that level and really listening to the customer tell us, how our existing products are doing or the competition or kind of where they think the category is going. So I like doing that, but also just strategy. I mean, I'm helping overseeing a lot of strategy of where we want to take the company, innovation. I work really a lot on innovation and just, challenging each department with KPIs and goals and holding everybody, accountable for where we're trying to take the company and are we meeting our goals and objectives so we can service the customer or not. And
Sure.
really that's, I'm kind of the chief customer officer here. I'm here making sure the customer stays happy and we're consistently great. That's my mantra. With everything we do, we need to be consistently great, no matter if you're, driving the forklift or, you're in operations or you're at the front of our office here, interacting with people coming in. How do we be consistently great so we outperform and outcompete against the competition?
Sure, absolutely. So speaking of innovation, you had mentioned, since your product is heavy and harder to ship to homes,
Mhm.
is it possible to make your juices into, like a dehydrated powder or something like that as like a packet?
Yeah, there's some of that out there. It's not, it hasn't been perfected very well. Let's just put it that way.
Gotcha.
But powders are very popular. We've looked at that space with some hydration powders that we formulated. But at this point, I don't know if the world needs another powder from us.
Yeah.
So we've got our hands full in the refrigerated chilled juice case and doing that for now. And we got still a large amount of market that we can go after.
So your innovation comes into different flavor profiles, that kind of thing?
Correct. Yep. So our innovation is, like orange. We added turmeric and ginger and probiotics, and we call that product Orange Ultimate Defense.
Mm,
We added elderberry and zinc and acerola cherry to boost the C to orange juice, and we call that Ultimate Immune.
mm,
Um, we
that's
come
good.
out with a ginger honey lemonade that's sweetened only with honey, with a little bit of stevia, so it gives it the sweetness, but with the low calories. So
Yeah,
stuff like that is what we're going after. Low calorie, high function, nutrient dense. Those are the kind of better for you beverages that we really are trying to go after. And our teas are the same thing. So we really brew it. We get these big bags of organic Assam tea from India. It's beautiful, great aroma in our facility. We brew it in large batches, or actually in small batches, and then we, bottle it up and send it off to customers. And we do a wonderful half and half with our lemon, our nice fresh NFC lemon juice. We lightly sweeten that with agave, and off it goes.
you ever thought about doing, like, a protein juice?
Yeah, I have, I have got samples just about everything that you can think of in a beverage space that we've tried and perfected. I've got, wonderful organic versions of Olipop and Poppy, that I did 4 or 5 years ago. I kind of saw those things coming, but, we just decided, what lanes to stay in and what lanes to not get into. I've got, protein shakes that we did similar to Koya or Remedy or some of those that were organic. But it just didn't feel like it was the right play for us. And
Sure.
sometimes it was right, and we probably maybe should have tried it. And other times, I'm happy that we didn't. So
Yeah.
we're in a good spot. We know we can do other things with our brand, but just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as they say, the riches are in the niches, right? The more you
Yep.
niche down, the better it is to operate and function.
Yeah. Yep. I am in agreement with you.
So you plan on staying in Florida with operations, or do you think that as you scale that you're gonna have multiple, offices or distribution, manufacturing centers?
I mean, I think Texas works really well for our model right now because a lot of our supply comes from southern Texas and the east coast of Mexico, and then it
Mhm.
splits the country in half, east and west. So, we're real happy strategically with that position. And I'm a Florida boy, so I'm not moving. Although I love Texas, Texas is nice too. It's similar to Florida. It's
Yeah.
hot out there.
Yeah, it
Um,
is.
it gets colder. It gets colder. Up there in Dallas, is crazy, man. That weather, you get both extremes. You can get in the teens and have it snowing and icing, and then you can get 115 in the summer.
Yeah.
Um, when you buy manufacturing equipment, you want to test it, go test it there and up there by Dallas because you'll get complete extremes of weather.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've got a lot of family in Tampa and St. Pete,
Okay.
uh, and when I'd go down there and visit, man, that humidity was just horrible. And then I've got my aunt lives in Houston, and I went to Houston, and that made Tampa and St. Pete like nothing.
I know. You're right.
Yeah. So your manufacturing facility, how that you are doing in-house now, how big of a facility is that?
So it's 75,000 square feet. It's it used to be a water bottling facility, and I originally partnered with the gentleman out there. We put all the equipment in, took about half of the facility, and he recently decided, hey, you're doing a great job, and I think I'm ready to get out of the water business. So we've since taken over the whole facility and have plans to continue to expand, which is great. So we really enjoy it. It's been a great partnership, and now we're in full control. Got a really good team out there. I go out at least once a month. That's kind of my Disney World. People come
Mm,
to Florida for their Disney World. I go to Texas to be in my facility and be in my Disney World.
yeah.
But it's a lot of fun. And now we had great co-pack partners before, but now it's our own. We can innovate quicker. We're more nimble to change. We can really, really dial in on our quality. to do exactly how we want it batch by batch, which is important for us because we have to get our quality right. Otherwise, we don't have an advantage in the market.
Absolutely. Quality is everything, right?
Mhm.
So before we leave, the one big question I wanna ask you, because your story is I love your story. It's so great how you bootstrapped this thing and grew it to what it is.
Thank you.
But as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, what do you think in the last 25 years has probably been the hardest thing that you had to do, and how did you overcome it?
We always chased supply. Organic is hard to do. Organics, anything growing organic, they don't have the playbook like they do conventional. They
Mhm.
have 100+ years of farming organic or farming conventional, and so they got a pretty good playbook for anybody coming in to plant whatever crop. And organic, you don't. I mean, it's just old school, trial by error, and experience is king. So it has always been a challenge for us to keep up with good quality organic supply. And so, we have a really good system now. We have agronomists, my dad and brother. We've diversified in enough locations so no one single weather event will kill us. In Florida, we could have had a devastating freeze like we had in 83, 85, and 89 that wiped out 600 acres of our family's citrus groves. We had to start all over.
Mhm.
We're diversified enough around our partners in northern and southern hemisphere that I think while it could affect us, it wouldn't end us. And
Right.
so, just developing that supply base because that's really what we are.
That's great.
Hmm.
Matt, thanks so much. I love your story. Such a inspirational success and journey. Where can people learn more about you? Are you on social media or any of that kind of stuff?
Oh yeah, we're everywhere. I'm blessed to have a wonderful wife who runs our marketing, and that is her talent, and it's great. So she's our social queen. UncleMats.com. Go there, click on our product. We have a store locator. Click on there, put your zip code in, and it'll tell you what item and in what store nearby to go find us. And if you don't find it there, we can always ship it to you. E-com, you can just order it right through our site. It will be more expensive, but we can get it to you one way or the other and be happy to.
That's great. Matt, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, you're welcome. Appreciate it anytime.